This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Good evening. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom at 6 o'clock. Donald Trump and Iran's top security official have held talks at the Pentagon to try and negotiate a deal and avoid military strikes. Trump says Iran should agree not to have any nuclear weapons, but Tehran insists its ballistic missiles and defence capabilities should not be on the agenda. Washington has deployed a naval aircraft carrier off Iran's shore following a deadly crackdown on anti-government protests, which killed thousands of people. But Iran's supreme leader warned a US attack on the country would spark a regional war. In the last half an hour, US President says he's hopeful they'll come to an agreement.
We have the biggest, most powerful ships in the world over there, very close, a couple of days, and hopefully we'll make a deal. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right.
15 people have been killed and 7 injured in Ukraine after a Russian drone strike hit a bus carrying miners. Officials of the energy company DTEK say all the victims were employees at the mine in southeastern Ukraine and were returning from a shift. The attack came just hours after President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a second round of US-brokered talks between the two countries set to take place in Abu Dhabi next week. Russia had agreed earlier this week to stop attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure until today. A second woman has alleged she was sent to the UK by Jeffrey Epstein to spend a night with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The incident is said to have taken place at Royal Lodge in 2010, when the woman was in her 20s. The Prime Minister says Andrew should be prepared to testify before US Congress about his links with the convicted sex offender. Emails between the pair have been revealed in the latest publication of documents, as well as photographs which appear to show Andrew leaning over an unidentified woman on the floor. Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing, and being named in the documents does not suggest any misconduct. Families of the children who were sexually abused by a worker at their nursery are taking legal action against the school, accusing them of consistently brushing concerns aside. 45-year-old Vincent Chan is facing years behind bars for molesting girls aged 3 and 4 while working at the Bright Horizons nursery in North London. Initially, 12 families were set to sue the nursery. That number has now increased to 46. They say beyond Chan's crimes, there are serious questions around how childcare providers recruit, supervise and safeguard, and how warning signs can be overlooked for so long. And in sport, Carlos Alcaraz has made tennis history, beating Novak Djokovic in 4 sets to win the Australian Open. The world #1 has become the youngest man to complete the career Grand Slam of all 4 major titles, having already won Wimbledon, the French and US Opens twice, each since 2022. 38-year-old Djokovic had been bidding to set a new standalone record of 25 singles titles and suggested he's unsure whether he'll compete in Melbourne again next year. You're up to date. I'll have more for you at 7 o'clock.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. In a week dominated by the Prime Minister's controversial visit to China, the government is now on the brink of its 15th U-turn over the Chagos Islands after its latest backtrack on business rates for pubs. From the government, I'll be joined by Housing Secretary Steve Reid. What really was the point of Sir Keir Starmer's trip to Asia? Plus, can he tell me how many homes have now been built under this Labour government? Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp will also be here. As more ex-Tories trash the Conservative Party's record in government, can the party be trusted on its pledge to leave the ECHR after so many broken promises from their 14 years in power? I'll be speaking to one of the new Reform UK recruits, Andrew Rosindell. What's happened to the much-anticipated Labour defector to Nigel Farage's party? And what does he make of the political journeys of colleagues Robert Jenrick and Nadeem Zahawi? Sir Keir Starmer faced pressure to bring Jimmy Lai, the imprisoned British national and pro-democracy campaigner, back from China. Mr Lai's son Sebastian will be here in the studio to share what he thinks of the government's handling of his father's case and the impression of the Prime Minister's visit with Xi Jinping. Mr Reid. Lovely to see you this morning. Hopefully you can hear me. Hello, hello. Great to have you on the show. You know what my first question is going to be, don't you? I need to know, Steve Reid.
Looking forward to hearing it.
I need to know, Steve Reid, how many houses have been built since Labour took power?
302,000 now.
Fabulous.
Pleased to say.
I'm glad to have that answer from you. It's not a gotcha question, I hope you'll agree. But isn't this problematic? Because if you look at charts suggesting the level of migration, I think it was put at 204,000 in 2025, actually your targets are way too short. In order to match migration as well as population rise, you're actually going to have to build 2.5 million houses over the next Parliament, and you're only planning to build 1.5. So you're 1 million homes short over the course of the next 5 years.
Well, we're starting from a difficult position because the previous government scrapped house building targets and triggered a housing crisis across the country. And my concern is that we've got double the number of people left sleeping rough on the streets, thanks to the last government. We need to get those people indoors. But young people today, when I was in my 20s, I was able to go and find a place to rent that I could afford to live in. And in my 30s, I bought my first flat, that important first foot on the housing ladder. Young people today are denied those opportunities because we haven't built enough new homes for years. So in order to get the housing sector growing again, we need to really ramp it up. 1.5 million is a stretching target within this Parliament, but we don't build that many, then stop. We'll then have a run rate that is much higher, and we keep building into the next Parliament as well, so that we can make the dream of home ownership come true for young people who have seen their dreams buried by the Conservatives and those Tories who have now defected to Reform.
You're blaming the Conservatives there, but in the last 18 months, you've actually built 40,000 fewer homes than the Tories built in their last 19 months in power.
Well, first of all, the number of homes being built right now would have been the tail end of what the Conservatives were doing. So that's why it's going down, because of the time it takes to get an application in, get consent, and then start building. But here's a question. Here's one for you. Do you know how much the increase in new housing starts went up this year compared to last year?
Well, on account of not being the Housing Secretary, no, I don't know the answer to that.
18%. I know you've got researchers that do this stuff for you, Camilla. 18%.
Well, I do quite a lot of my own research, actually.
That is nearly one-fifth more homes, nearly one-fifth more homes starting to be built this year compared to 1 year ago. We are ratcheting up the number. That's why the Independent Office of Budget Responsibility says this government will build more homes than any government has built for 40 years.
But you still did build fewer homes. You still built fewer homes in your first 18 months than the Tories built in their last 18 months.
It's the tail end of what the Tories were doing. Anything being built now,
you did build fewer.
Would have been things that went through under the previous government, because it takes 18 months to go through the planning system. So what you'll see now, Camilla, is exactly what we just saw. The numbers ratcheting up. Last week's figures, one-fifth more than a year ago, and that will keep going up over the coming years, and we will build the homes the Tories refuse to build, and that will open the dream of home ownership to young people. That's why I'm doing it.
We'll come back to domestic matters in just a minute, but I do have Sebastian Lai, who is the son of Jimmy Lai, in the studio with me, waiting to come on after we've done this interview. In what world did the Prime Minister think it was a good idea to go out to China while a British citizen is in solitary confinement for 5 years? Why did he do that?
Well, Camilla, it's so that he could raise that issue directly with President Xi, the president of China. There is now
he definitely raise it?
He raised it directly with the president of China. There is now an open dialogue. There is much more hope when there is a dialogue and a conversation than zero hope when there's no dialogue. Now, what we need to do is use that open channel and keep pushing hard until Jimmy Lai is released. Refusing to talk to the Chinese means no hope of Jimmy Lai being released. I want to see him released, so it is right that the Prime Minister raised it with the President of China.
How confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that Keir Starmer can secure the release of Jimmy Lai?
Well, before there was zero hope, now there is some hope. And surely some hope is better than none.
A lot of hope. I mean, otherwise, well, what's the point of the trip if he can't guarantee his release?
If we did what you're suggesting, there would be no hope of Jimmy Lai being released. How is that in anyone's interests? We have to have a dialogue.
I'm asking you what the trip has achieved. Because we're scratching our heads over here. Somebody who has got a proud record of fighting for people's human rights goes and visits China, which has obviously got an appalling human rights record. A British citizen is in solitary confinement because, lo and behold, he produced a newspaper that was critical of the communist regime. People are asking, well, what on earth has this trip achieved? If it had achieved the release of Jimmy Lai, we'd all celebrate and say, thank God he went to Beijing. Yeah. What has it achieved?
If Camilla, in a few months' time, he's released, are you going to say you were wrong for arguing that we shouldn't speak to China? If this results in Jimmy Lai's freedom, where there is now some hope for that because of dialogue, I'm sure you will be celebrating and forgetting that you were telling the world...
I haven't called for a lack of... I haven't called for a lack of dialogue with China. I'm talking about the wisdom... No. Sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Reid. I'm talking about the wisdom of going out to China at this particular point when we've just had the green lighting of a Chinese super embassy that the Telegraph has revealed blueprints show has got preparations for a spying dungeon underneath that's raised huge concerns with the intelligence services. And in light of the fact, he could have said, I won't come to China because you've imprisoned in solitary confinement a British citizen.
The media, people like you, just sit there and pontificate and get it wrong again and again and again. The security forces said it is better to have a Chinese embassy in one location than spread across 7. It's easier to keep tabs on them. Now,
I think they said that before they saw the unredacted plans.
Because it's not true. And it's far better to have a dialogue to secure the freedom of Jimmy Lai than sit back and do nothing, and he's never going to be released. If he's released in a few months' time, I will enjoy coming back on this show and you telling me the Prime Minister did the right thing.
OK, we look forward to him being released. We hope that he is released.
So do I, on
the Chinese super embassy, unfortunately, the intelligence services and the police were dealing with blueprints that were redacted. They didn't see the unredacted blueprints. We only saw the unredacted blueprints because of the reporting of my colleague Gareth Caulfield. Just moving on to the Epstein files.
Now you have particular insight into what the security forces are saying and seeing. But
that's what the intelligence services told the Telegraph in response to the blueprints.
It is far better to have the Chinese in one location than in 7, and people will be able to understand. It's common sense. If you're looking at one building rather than 7, you can be more secure about it. So they raise no concerns whatsoever about security, and that's the truth of it. But what the Telegraph is saying, that is what the security forces said.
In related issues, because, of course, the Chagos deal is in the interests of the Chinese, who have close links to Mauritius. The Chagos deal must be like... Well, yes, because the International Court had a Chinese communist official sitting on it that made a non-binding judgment about the future of the Chagos Islands. We now find out that there was a 1966... Sorry, Mr. Reid, could I finish my question? I'm so sorry. Could I finish my question?
You're misrepresenting the case and then wheeling on as if that what you said is true, and it isn't.
No,
I think I need you when you're misrepresenting the case to the public.
Your bill has just been pulled in Parliament because it's been revealed that the UK signed a 1966 treaty with the US to ensure that the Chagos Islands remained in UK ownership. So why on earth didn't Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and indeed the Prime Minister, who are both strong adherents to international law, know about the existence of this treaty?
the bill will be coming back. And what the Chinese want is the British out of Chagos so that they could get their own base there. So what the government is doing is making sure it remains a British base, accessible for NATO and not to the Chinese. Again, Camilla, the total opposite of what you're just telling to your viewers. You are misrepresenting the situation about national security and the security of NATO, and it would be better if you didn't do that.
Well, no, I haven't made any misrepresentations. I'm merely saying that the ICJ decision was non-binding.
You just said the Chinese want to do what we're doing on Chagos. They want the opposite.
Can you answer the question? Why wasn't the Prime Minister or the Attorney General aware of a 1966 treaty which has caused you to have to pull the bill from Parliament?
They are fully aware of it, and the bill will be coming back.
Because you have the bill before Parliament.
The bill will be coming back. There are sometimes procedural reasons in the House of Commons and the House of Lords why you have to do things. That bill will be going forwards because it is in the national security interest of this country that we have a British base there, not a Chinese base.
All right, we need to leave it there, Steve Reid. Thank you for a very feisty interview this morning. Great to speak to you.
Thank you for a feisty questioning.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
It's incredibly difficult, and this sort of passive digital consumption that young children are now consuming, it is changing childhood. Tech companies are rewiring childhood and changing human development on an almost unimaginable scale, and it's terrifying. And when a screen competes with a toy, obviously the screen is always going to win. So we really need to start cutting back on this screen-based childhood. We need to get children to be outside again, creative, giving them that time and that space to be bored, to play, the things that they're lacking at the moment.
I hear what you're saying, and, you know, the kind of digital dummy, as it were, the pacifier you give your kids is one thing, but another part of this report, which is very, very concerning, are the basic life skills like potty training. Yeah. When you've got 28% of children now who are starting school unable to eat or drink independently, and 26% aren't potty trained, teachers are then expected to pick up the pieces. It's not fair on teachers to have to be, breaking children in, as it were, with life skills that parents should furnish them with. So I understand about the concern about digital and iPads, but this is parents not doing their job, isn't it?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on schools, and I agree with that point about the teachers, and it's not fair on the teachers and the schools to pick this up. We need to educate parents, and we need to highlight and raise awareness about the dangers of what excessive screen time in these early years are doing. The guidance coming out from the government about screen time for under fives is very welcomed. And I think that, if we want to tackle screen time in these teenagers and later years, we do need to really look at what's happening in these younger years.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And with me now in the studio is Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Lovely to see you this morning, Mr. Philp. I don't know if you caught it, but I just spoke to Steve Reid. We've got Sebastian Lai coming into the studio after this, the son of Jimmy Lai. I said to Steve Reid, was it really right for Keir Starmer to go to China? It's a perfectly legitimate question, knowing that he's got a British citizen in solitary confinement for, oh, shock horror, reporting that perhaps the Communist Party isn't all sweetness and light. Was that trip misjudged last week?
Good morning, Camilla. Yes, it was misjudged because China is an adversary. They're spying on us on a systematic basis. They're stealing our technology. Keir Starmer went over there in order to prostrate himself in front of President Xi in the hope of getting a few crumbs of economic comfort to help fix the economic mess that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have created here, with job losses mounting and businesses going bust. And Keir Starmer traded our national security in exchange for those crumbs, for example, giving consent to... In fact, Steve Reid himself gave consent to that super embassy just a few days ago. Just before the trip, Keir Starmer has traded our national security for a few crumbs. The timing of that embassy consent was not a coincidence, and he barely even raised the Jimmy Lai question, which was pretty shameful.
Mr Reid said, well, he won't be released if there isn't a dialogue with China, which is probably a legitimate point.
But you can have a dialogue without the Prime Minister having to personally go over to Beijing on metaphorical bended knee. In fact, he's effectively rewarded China for their behaviour by giving consent for the super embassy, which will become a base for espionage activity, not just in the UK, but frankly across Europe as well.
On that, though, don't the Tories regret selling the Chinese that Royal Mint site in the first place? That was a massive mistake.
Well, that goes back, I think, getting on for 10 years.
I know, it's still under the Tories.
Yeah, and clearly...
Shouldn't have happened.
And clearly, 10 years ago, we didn't know what we know today about the way China operate. And it is also true to say that the Conservatives never gave consent for the embassy.
I know, but if it looks like a communist and talks like a communist, it probably is a communist regime that's going to spy on Great Britain 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, I think the nature of China's threat has dramatically increased in the last 10 years. Certainly our understanding of it has. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, when I was Technology Minister, I saw China systematically trying to steal intellectual property relating to tech, so semiconductor IP, graphene, quantum computing and so on, by infiltrating universities and businesses and just directly stealing it. Now, that nature of threat, I think we've only really understood in the last 5 years or so, which is why the last government eventually took the decision to get rid of Huawei from the 5G network. If you go back 10 or 15 years, we didn't really, I think, understand fully exactly what China was up to in terms of espionage.
All right. But you did understand the human rights restrictions on your own immigration policy, even back in the day, right? Now, Suella Braverman has defected to Reform, saying you can't believe the Tories when they say they'll leave the ECHR. They're lying, they just won't do it. Now, she's pointing to the kind of rump of wets in your party that won't allow Kemi Badenoch to pursue this policy if she should win power at the next general election. She probably has some evidence to base that up on the basis that you haven't honoured previous immigration pledges. You've been found wanting tens of thousands. We're going to stop the boats. You didn't.
Yeah. Well, look, I think we've now got a new leader and a new approach. We thought about this new policy quite carefully, so we didn't just come out and announce it off the cuff. We got David Wolfson to do like a 200-page report on ECHR exit. We discussed it twice in Shadow Cabinet at length and decided we had to leave. And when we announced that policy at party conference 3 or 4 months ago, not a single sitting Conservative MP, not even one, publicly criticised our new policy to come out of the ECHR.
Doesn't necessarily mean they privately support it, though.
And we've also, and I've spoken to lots of colleagues privately, they understand now, after Wolfson's report, that the only way we can control our borders is to leave the ECHR. Yeah. That's not an opinion. That's based on a proper legal opinion. We could.
Generic campaign for that, and you didn't win the leadership because of that issue. Many people weren't willing to kind of cross the Rubicon into saying, I want to leave the ECHR. So you've been on a journey, but at the end of the day, you could have solved this issue back when you were in power.
Yeah, and frankly, I wish we had. I wish we had come out of the ECHR 3, 4, 5 or 10 years ago, but the fact we didn't, for whatever reason. We've now got a new leader. We've got a new approach. We've done this properly. We've done the proper report. Sure. We've done. We not just we concluded we need to leave. Wolfson's report explains how you leave as well. Something Reform certainly does not have. They haven't done the detailed work in the way that we've done it. And now, having reached this position, we're completely united as a party behind it. And there is absolutely no question that if we win the next election, this will get implemented because every single MP is behind it.
Tory candidates don't back this, they don't get to stand.
That's correct. I don't see how any no Conservative can run for Parliament unless they're willing to back this policy.
But this is the problem, right? And I appreciate that you probably get bored of people saying, well, under the Tories this happened. But say, for instance, your response to the sentencing of the illegal migrant Deng Manik, who killed Rhiannon White, in, let's be honest, the most horrifyingly brutal fashion. It was an absolutely appalling incident. And you made the point, well, this wouldn't have happened if he hadn't arrived illegally by boat. He arrived illegally by boat in July 2024, admittedly after the general election, right? But by your logic, it wouldn't have happened if he had not arrived illegally by boat. If you'd actually stopped the boats by implementing the Rwanda plan before Rishi Sunak erroneously called that early election, Rhiannon White might still be alive today. Isn't that the case?
Well, the point I was making in my tweet about that is that if the Rwanda scheme had gone ahead as planned and the first flight was due to take off on July the 24th, this appalling man, this Sudanese man who stabbed Rhiannon 23 times with a screwdriver, he would have been eligible to be on that first or one of the first Rwanda flights. So the point I was making, that if Keir Starmer hadn't cancelled those Rwanda flights... I'll come on to the election in a second. Yeah. If Keir Starmer hadn't cancelled those Rwanda flights, this man, I think, could, and frankly should, have been on one of the first planes leaving here to go to Rwanda. Yes. And that this case illustrates why it was such an appalling mistake by, in fact, virtually treason, frankly, by Keir Starmer to cancel that Rwanda flight before it took off.
He was able to cancel it because Rishi Sunak called an early election. Right, he bottles it. This is what happens. Rishi Sunak bottles it. He's having a hard time in the press. Everyone's saying that he's a lame duck. He launches this election campaign that proves to be a complete and utter disaster. That then gives Labour licence to cancel the plan. Yep. You haven't got the planes up in the air. You haven't proved it to have a deterrent factor. This is what differentiates what's happened in the UK with Australia. When the Liberal Party, known as the Conservatives in Australia, launched their Stop the Boats plan, they proved that it works, and then, lo and behold, the Labour Party continues it. You didn't do that, so this is actually Rishi Sunak's fault.
Well, I think it was a huge mistake by Rishi to call an early election. I mean, not just because the result was terrible for us, but also it meant the Rwanda scheme never started because the first flight was due to take off about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the election. So no question at all, the timing of that election was a catastrophic error, in my view. However, it wasn't Rishi that cancelled the Rwanda scheme or the Conservatives.
No, but
it was. Let me finish. It was Keir Starmer who cancelled the Rwanda scheme just before it started. In my view, it absolutely would have worked. It worked in Australia, as you've mentioned. The American administration under Trump have been removing people on the border in the last year. That worked as well.
But you knew, because he said he was opposed to the Rwanda the Rwanda scheme, although some people may think it was a scam. He was opposed to it all the time that he was opposition leader. So you knew he was never going to continue with the plan. That's why Rishi Sunak's election timing was so idiotic, because of the timing before that first flight had taken off.
Yeah, well, I mean, I essentially agree. The election should have been held a lot later to give time for the first Rwanda flights to leave the ground and for the deterrent effect to kick in, because obviously if you're an illegal immigrant in France and you know if you cross the channel you've got a pretty good chance of winding up in Rwanda fairly quickly, you're going to decide to not bother making the crossing. So yes, the election timing was a mistake, but it's still on Keir Starmer's shoulders that it was Starmer who cancelled that Rwanda scheme just before it was due to start. The consequence is that this awful man was able to murder Rhiannon because he might otherwise have been removed, and the numbers crossing the channel have surged since the election because there is no deterrent, as even Keir Starmer himself now admits.
We're squeezed on time. Let me just ask you one more question. Can you guarantee that there won't be any more Tory defections to reform, at least of MPs? I know that's difficult to calculate as councillors are concerned, but MPs, because Farage has given this deadline of May the 7th to cross sides.
Well, obviously, I can't look into the soul of 120-odd colleagues, so I can't give any guarantees. I certainly hope that no one else will make that decision. What I do know is that May deadline, I think, is actually born of a little bit of desperation, because Nigel Farage can see...
He can't be that desperate. He's well ahead of you in the polls, isn't he?
Yes, he has been, but you can see in the last, 2 or 3 months, the poll's just getting a little bit closer, the Conservatives going up a bit, Reform going down a bit, and when you poll who would make the best Prime Minister, Kemi v Nigel Farage or Kemi against Starmer, Kemi wins on both of those head-to-heads.
Why aren't you beating
which is
reform then?
well, because we're 3 years away from an election, and people are
people don't trust
and
you.
people are frustrated about the last
People
government.
think reform will be better on immigration
Well,
than
I'm
the
not sure
Tories because you previously lied.
So I'm not sure they would be better they wouldn't be better because they don't have detailed, credible plans, which we do. But look, we're 3 years away from an election. It's a long way to go, and in by-elections, local elections, or even opinion polls, people aren't really answering the question, who should govern the country, which is the question at a general election. So the momentum is turning a bit, and I think that's why Nigel Farage is trying to make people jump sooner to reverse his declining momentum.
Okay.
But I hope our colleagues, remain immune to his blandishments, because Nigel Farage is a man who supports Vladimir Putin and thinks we should get rid of the two-child benefit cap.
I admired him as a leader. I wouldn't say he supports the Russian president.
Oh, hang on. As recently as last June, as recently as the general election, Farage was blaming Ukraine for getting invaded, which is outrageous.
All right. I think he'll probably push back on that. But Chris Philp, you've made your case.
I have.
Thank you very much.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. A new week is upon us, but the weather is very much remaining in the same theme we've seen during this last one. It's rather unsettled. We've got rain at present across the southeast and in the northeast. It could be heavy at times in places. Further towards the west for parts of southwest England, Wales, but particularly Northern Ireland, skies will be clearing overnight, so we'll see some frost developing, freezing fog, but also some icy stretches around first thing on Monday morning. But you have the clouds still lingering in the east. Temperatures will be a shade higher as you step out first thing tomorrow morning. It is, though, going to be a reasonably grey, dull, drab day for many of us, with some pretty strong winds out towards the Northern Isles, continuing to see some gale strength gusts through here. It's generally western regions that might see a few more in the way of those limited, brighter, perhaps sunnier spells at times, but really cloud is going to be the main theme right throughout the day, and that will continue to bring some patchy outbreaks of rain and drizzle in various locations. There is this band of longer rain that will just push its way into the Isles of Scilly and eventually towards parts of Cornwall as we head into the afternoon period. The breeze beginning to strengthen through here as well. Feeling quite cool underneath all the clouds, temperatures generally peaking at around 6 to 9 degrees Celsius. We'll have this focus on this rain as it continues to push inland into Monday evening, and then there's a rain warning in force for this as it does arrive associated with this area of low pressure. Meanwhile, up towards the north, we're going to be pulling in some slightly colder air from the continent into Tuesday, and so that will allow for snow to start falling to as low as 300 metres or so over some of the Scottish mountains, perhaps to lower levels for the likes of Orkney and Shetland as well. And we could see a little bit of hill snow for the likes of Wales as that band of rain continues its journey northwards, so there is going to be some further wet conditions around at times for many of us as we head throughout this forthcoming week.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the Reform UK MP for Romford, Andrew Rosindell, who points out two errors in my introduction earlier. First of all, you were in the Conservative Party for 45 years, not 30. And second of all, you are not the latest defector because Suella came just a couple of days after you. Fair enough. Now, you've said that you left the Tories because they aren't right-wing enough. And I want to just probe that because you've been in the party for a long, long time, including under John Major, serving as a shadow minister under David Cameron, when the party was far more left-wing than it is now. So why was it OK to stay in the party then, but not under Kemi Badenoch?
So, Camilla, there's only ever been, until recently, one right-of-centre party that is a serious contender for power, and that's the Conservative and Unionist Party that I joined in 1981 under Margaret Thatcher. Now, the party of Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, it doesn't bear any resemblance to what the party has evolved into over the years. And for me, the last 14 years of Conservative government, particularly the last 5 years when we got that great majority under Boris, and don't forget Nigel Farage withdrew his Brexit Party candidates, which helped the Conservatives get that majority. I sat as a backbencher watching the failure of those years and the opportunities missed and the things that we could have done to put our country in a stronger place but failed to do. And that led to, of course, the worst defeat in the history of the Conservative Party. We now have another party which I believe stands up for traditional Britain, and that's Reform UK.
I know, but Nigel Farage has been around a long time, almost as long as you, Andrew, and he's had other incarnations, be it UKIP or the Brexit Party. So at any point you could have left the Tories because of their leftwards drift, and I would suggest that the leftwards drift was strongest under Major and Cameron. And yet you remained a Tory MP.
Well,
why didn't you resign on your principles
I
then?
was National Chairman of the Young Conservatives under John Major.
Yes.
And we tore the Maastricht Treaty up at the YC conference. I have been speaking out within the Conservative Party my entire time to say that we should be more like a true Conservative Party. Unfortunately, the tail's been wagging the dog. These sort of Prosper UK people, the sort of Tory reform group end of the party, they have so much more influence and they always drag the party into the centre.
Prosper UK, OK, so you're referring to this kind of rather wet setup that's been established by the likes of Amber Rudd, Andy Street, Ruth Davidson and others. But they're not sitting MPs. The reason they were junked at the last general election and beyond is because they were too wet. So isn't there a contradiction at the heart of what you're saying? Because actually, comparatively to Major, Cameron, even Boris, even Rishi Sunak, actually Kemi Badenoch has pivoted the party to the right. They've committed to leaving the ECHR. They've committed to chairing up the Climate Change Act, getting rid of net zero and actually reversing some of the mistakes. And it's at that point that you decide to leave.
Well, it's quite straightforward. All of those things should have been done whilst we were in government. We had the chance to do so many things. I remember 10 years ago, in the 2015 election, we promised to come out of the Human Rights Act. We never did it. We promised election after election after election, the Conservatives did, to deal with immigration. We failed to deal with it. We sucked up the net zero, disastrous net zero policies, which is going to make our country much poorer and give the competitive advantage to China. We carried on with the woke agenda. We didn't do anything to reverse Tony Blair's constitutional vandalism. So I don't think, and I speak to my constituents in Romford, and they don't trust the Conservatives to actually do what they say.
OK.
And that's the problem. Nigel will be a man of his word.
All right, so if your constituents in Romford are fully behind you backing reform, why don't you have a by-election and then put your reform support to the test? So if you think you'll take Romford with you, you've nothing to fear in having a by-election.
Well, I can't judge what the people of Romford do in any by-election, but what I can tell you is that when I speak to the people of Romford, do you know what they want, Camilla? They want a general election. They don't want multiple by-elections causing disruption and costing money.
But you can understand the argument for a by-election,
We need a general election. That's what we really need.
Haven't you previously called for by-elections in situations where others from other parties have defected?
Well, I haven't actually. In the past, if people resign and join another party, there hasn't been by-elections generally. But also, we change prime ministers. We don't have a general election when you change prime ministers, and we've got to find out soon, aren't we, about that?
The other reason why you said you left the Conservatives was because they opened a dialogue over the future of the Chagos Islands back in 2022. I know you have campaigned on an APPG, which is concerned with overseas territory matters, but you didn't actually mention Chagos in the House of Commons, according to Hansard, between 2022 and 2024.
So I have campaigned on the Chagos Islands for my entire time in Parliament. I chaired the all-party group on the Chagos Islands. The problem with the all-party group is it is cross-party. So it was myself and Jeremy Corbyn and people from all 7 different parties, and they all had slightly different views about the long-term future of the Chagos Islands. I was very clear. the Chagosian people should have self-determination. Jeremy Corbyn, who was the previous chairman of the group, I was his successor, he believed that it should go straight to Mauritius.
Yes.
But it was about resettlement of the Chagosians, which we all fought for. So I have raised this multiple times. If you look at my urgent question 10 years ago,
yes,
I raised this whole issue,
I know, but you didn't
multiple
raise concerns
meetings.
in the Houses of Parliament about this re-entering negotiations in 2022 that's been pinned on James Cleverly. I make that point because the reformers are all saying we must do something about Chagos, and I'm sure there is a back channel of dialogue between Nigel Farage and President Trump, or at least people around President Trump, because we know he's got those links. But you have to concede that it's now the Conservatives that have unveiled this 1966 treaty, which has halted this legislation in Parliament, which is a good thing, right?
Very good. But the reality is that the Conservatives, and I called for this over and over again, taking delegations to meet ministers, having one-to-one meetings with ministers. The answer to this, Camilla, is the same as we do with the Falkland Islands or Gibraltar. The people of those islands should have self-determination. Now, had we allowed them to go back to their ancestral homeland, which we jolly well should have done all those years ago, then they would have absolutely voted to stay British. It would have never gone to the International Court because you'd have gone through a proper process of decolonisation.
This treaty that's been discovered, 1966 treaty, which suggests that the UK and the US agreed that it should always remain under UK control and ownership. Isn't it extraordinary that Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer, as proponents of international law, didn't know about the existence of this treaty?
Well, absolutely right. I mean, it's great that that's been uncovered, but what it shows is that the real reason they are doing this is not really in British interests. This is a backroom deal with the Mauritian government, and it's been puppeteered by the Foreign Office for many years. Now, I actually think the Foreign Office probably can see that this is a terrible deal now, but they always wanted to give Chagos Islands to Mauritius, but it was never part of Mauritius. And surely the answer should be we treat the Chagos Islands the same as we do every other overseas territory, and the people themselves should have the right of self-determination.
I did promise the audience I'd ask you one question. Do you know what's happened to your Labour defector, meant to have been unveiled last week to reform? Do we know who it is?
No,
Are you unveiling someone, a donor, a key figure? That's what we were hearing. And then it's all gone quiet.
I can tell you that there are a lot of people from all different political parties who are thinking about joining Reform UK. So I can't comment on a particular individual. You have to ask Nigel that.
Yes.
I think...
Well, we're happy for Nigel Farage to come on this show, by the way, Andrew Rosindell. Welcome back, Nigel, whenever you can come on.
Great. Well, I hope he does, and I'm sure he will soon. But there's a tidal wave of people coming to reform from all political parties.
We've got more defections coming.
I believe there will be, because I think
including Labour ones.
People can see the way the country's moving, and I think people know that it's Nigel Farage and Reform UK that offers the best hope for our United Kingdom.
Right. Andrew Rosindell, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, we have a south-shifted jet stream that's just bringing areas of low pressure across Europe, so it is unsettled. We've got spells of rain, more so across Portugal and into Spain and into France. Across the Mediterranean, we are also seeing some heavy spells of rain and thunderstorms, but also some strong winds, so expect some rough seas here. Otherwise, there's going to be further showers on the cards. There will be some brightness in between, though.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. With me now in the studio is Sebastian Lai, the son of British national Jimmy Lai, who's currently languishing in prison in Hong Kong, having been there since 2020 in solitary confinement, basically for being a journalist and being critical of the communist regime over there.
Yeah, exactly. My father ran the biggest newspaper in Hong Kong, but more importantly, it was a newspaper that supported democracy. So for 30 years, that's what him and his colleagues campaigned for, no matter what kind of intimidation threat he had. And then they passed the national security law in 2020. My father had the opportunity to leave. As you said before, he's a British citizen. He could have had a very comfortable life anywhere in the world. But as he said himself, if he leaves, he'll be living comfortably. But if he stays, he'll be living meaningfully.
Yes.
So he stayed, defending his principles, but more importantly, defending his colleagues. And for that, he's been kept in solitary confinement, which is essentially being tortured.
You were able to listen earlier to me speaking to the Housing Secretary, Steve Reed, about Keir Starmer's trip to China last week. I mean, I put it to him that there are some that believe that the Prime Minister simply shouldn't have had that meeting with President Xi while a British citizen languishes in prison. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Look, a lot of people are very worried about national security, especially from China, right? And we seem to have given a lot of stuff away, you know, including the trip, including the super embassy. What have we gotten in return? They haven't done anything to abate our concerns. I mean, it seems to be a relatively easy thing for them to do, to put a 78-year-old man who's in very, very bad health on a plane back home here to Britain.
Sure.
And if they can't even do that, something so simple, what does that say about the relationship?
Mr. Reid made the point, well, look, if there's no dialogue with China, then how do you expect to secure his release? My counter-argument to that was, no, I wasn't suggesting that there shouldn't be diplomatic relations between the UK and China. Of course there should be. But did he have to go out there on a bells and whistles Beijing mission? That was my question. Is it appropriate to do that while your father is in solitary confinement for 5 years?
Yeah, I think, you know, what Mr. Reid said, obviously, he said that with the dialogue there is possibility. I really hope so. I mean, at this point, you know, I think he said we'll see whatever happens in the next few months, because that's really what we have. We have a few months. His health is getting worse and worse.
Tell me about his health. He's got diabetes. He's not getting proper medical treatment.
Yeah, so he's got diabetes. He's been kept in a 60 square feet by himself in solitary confinement. 14 days of solitary confinement is prolonged solitary confinement. He's been there for 1,800 days. So a man at his age, 78 years old, it's no wonder that he's getting all these health issues, right? He's got heart issues. He's getting, his nails are falling off. His teeth are rotting. It's incredibly heartbreaking. And this is a man who spiritually and mentally is still very strong, but his body is slowly degrading. I honestly don't know how much longer he has.
That's very difficult to hear, especially as you haven't been able to speak to him properly for how long now?
Since the end of 2020. I haven't been able to go back to Hong Kong because I advocate on his behalf.
And how do you communicate? Do you send letters?
He's allowed to receive letters and to send letters back. And, I hear about his situation because he's been going to in court so people see him and see how much weight he's lost, for example. Last year he lost 10 kilos and how physically diminished he is. But they also say that he's still, again, going strong, and this
mentally
is amazing.
Tough,
mentally
right?
tough,
Yeah. But I mean, it's all very well about the headlines and this appears in the papers and it's a high-profile case. At the end of the day, this is your son and this is your dad. Yeah. I mean, just how horrific has this been over the course of the last 5 years? I mean, you must have just been tearing your hair out, frankly.
Yeah, well... Yeah. What's that to it? It's you always kind of worry that you're going to get a text one day saying that something bad happened to him.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's in some sense your family's frozen in time because of all these events that happen. He's not there. Mm. But he can be. He's in prison in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And I think, look, some part of me is obviously very sad, right? It's very sad that this is happening to him. Some part of me is also incredibly proud of what he's done.
Yes.
I mean, he's a hero to many people around the world.
Stood up for his principles. Right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those stories that you almost see in a movie and you think, wow, like, would I do the same thing if I was in that situation?
But don't you sometimes wish, God, I wish he had got out? Yeah. It's very honourable and I'm proud of him, and he has been a man of great moral courage, physical courage as well, to put up with solitary confinement for 5 years. But why didn't he just get out?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big part of me just wants my father, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I don't need him to be here. I just want him to be there for the occasions. But people have asked me, have I told him to leave? Because many people told him to leave, and I've thought about this very long and hard. And I still remember my father when he was first arrested the first time. He was arrested and then let out, and someone asked him, Jimmy, do you regret what you've done? Knowing that it's led to this, knowing that you're most certainly going to get imprisoned. He said, look, I was waiting in the holding cell and it's very cold there, so they gave me this little blanket and I couldn't sleep all night. And I thought to myself over the last 30 years, what I've done over the last 30 years, campaigning for freedom for the people of Hong Kong, what would I have changed? And he pauses and says, I wouldn't have changed a goddamn thing.
No.
I mean, as a son, pride's well, it brings me great pride. But also, it gives me some solace that what he's doing is not only the right thing, it's something that needs to be done.
And also, when you talk about your father's record of journalism over the course of the last 30 years, it does call into question what Chris Philp was telling me about, we didn't know back then what we know now. And I questioned him because the Tories are now anti the super embassy that they actually sold to the Chinese in the first place in 2018, that Royal Mint site that people at the time said, this is a really important historic place at the centre of London. Oh, by the way, it's also next to some extremely important and sensitive cables linking the City of London to the rest of Europe and the world. Do you think that there is an argument to say, we should have fostered the golden relationship? Or don't figures like your father and, the author Yun Chang and others, they could see what President Xi was from the very beginning, couldn't they?
That's why this relationship, this kind of warming of relationships, quote unquote, normalization, is so incredibly important to make sure that my father is released from this. Because if they can't even look, in the end of the day, I mean, trade is great. We obviously need to trade with China, but we're never going to trade our human rights. We're never going to trade the dignity, the freedoms of our citizens. And I hope that's not what's happening at the moment. But that needs to be, that needs to be shown.
Also, Keir Starmer as an individual's decision to go out there in light of his own very proud human rights record, he was a human rights lawyer, sort of does seem to be juxtaposed with exactly how China is treating its own citizens, the Uyghurs, let alone British nationals like your father. I mean, we just didn't get much clarity as to how many of these issues were raised in detail. What are you hearing on back channels about whether your father's case was raised? And Steve Reed there saying, well, he has increased the prospect of him being released. Do you believe that? Do you believe that there's a higher chance of your dad being released now than 2 weeks ago before he went to China?
I don't. First of all, they haven't communicated with me, so I don't know the details. But I'm very happy to hear from Mr. Reed that my father's case was raised. Sorry. Look, I think in these situations, I just have to kind of put my hope in the government, which it's all you can do. So I hope that they don't let my father down. I hope they don't let the people of Hong Kong down, and I hope they don't let the people of Great Britain down.
Yes. I mean, Sebastian, you're doing a great job by your dad. He'd be very proud of you for what you're doing, and we will continue to highlight his plight here at GB News. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. A new week is upon us, but the weather is very much remaining in the same theme we've seen during this last one. It's rather unsettled. We've got rain at present across the southeast and in the northeast. It could be heavy at times in places. Further towards the west for parts of southwest England, Wales, but particularly Northern Ireland, skies will be clearing overnight, so we'll see some frost developing, freezing fog, but also some icy stretches around first thing on Monday morning. But you have the clouds still lingering in the east. Temperatures will be a shade higher as you step out first thing tomorrow morning. It is, though, going to be a reasonably grey, dull, drab day for many of us, with some pretty strong winds out towards the Northern Isles, continuing to see some gale strength gusts through here. It's generally western regions that might see a few more in the way of those limited, brighter, perhaps sunnier spells at times, but really is cloud is going to be the main theme right throughout the day, and that will continue to bring some patchy outbreaks of rain and drizzle in various locations. There is this band of longer rain that will just push its way into the Isles of Scilly and eventually towards parts of Cornwall as we head into the afternoon period. The breeze beginning to strengthen through here as well. Feeling quite cool underneath all the clouds, temperatures generally peaking at around 6 to 9 degrees Celsius. We'll have this focus on this rain as it continues to push inland into Monday evening, and then there's a rain warning in force for this as it does arrive associated with this area of low pressure. Meanwhile, up towards the north, we're going to be pulling in some slightly colder air from the continent into Tuesday, and so that will allow for snow to start falling to as low as 300 metres or so over some of the Scottish mountains, perhaps to lower levels for the likes of Orkney and Shetland as well. We could see a little bit of hill snow for the likes of Wales as that band of rain continues its journey northwards, so there is going to be some further wet conditions around at times for many of us as we head throughout this forthcoming week.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us.
Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for 2 to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand or even Sri Lanka. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 323225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
Practice Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News.